Give us a cheer. Yeah, that's it. Good. They're the fun seats up there. I'm sure there's a few deals going down. I know Bron from Capital Brief's here. Come and tell me too. It's happy I can get up very quickly. But before we break, I would like to welcome to the stage the Honourable Alex Hawke MP, the Shadow Minister for Industry, Innovation and Manager of Opposition Business in the House. He's here in the House. Welcome, Alex. Over to you.
You make it sound so exciting, but it is not. It is not. Look, thank you for the introduction. It's a great privilege to be here at the Intersekt conference. As representing the opposition, I know you've heard from the Assistant Treasurer this morning in the government, and it's also a good opportunity for me to come along with two portfolios that are pretty interesting. Industry, which is a very traditional Australian portfolio in the government and the operation of government, the way we think about government. And then innovation, which of course the marriage of those two is the old and the new in terms of our Australian private sector businesses. I did hear Judy just briefly at the end there, and I thought she had a very important point about not being a tyrant. I thought that could be a good message for government as well when you're being a titan. And I also want to acknowledge in the room today we've got Simon Kennedy, who is my colleague. He's the new Assistant Minister for Innovation and the Digital Economy, someone who you'll hear more from in coming years about regulation in the digital space and how we're going to regulate the payment systems better in Australia. So welcome Simon as well. We're doing a roundtable shortly after this. Today I want to just speak briefly about some of the way we are thinking about regulation in the future, specifically about artificial intelligence, but also about things that will affect your sector and FinTech. And I want to acknowledge in the beginning, FinTech is obviously one of the most valued and I think promising of our success stories in an Australian context. We do have a great record in FinTech and leading the way. I think over a long time, essentially the Australian story has married some of the best elements of the financial systems around the world over many, many years, all through our history, to produce something pretty unique. And that's what we have when we call the long history of what we now call FinTech in Australia. We know when Australia was founded, we know the colonies pioneered banking and payments. They innovated infrastructure with banks, building societies, gold-based sovereigns, from the early days of colonial New South Wales, a penal colony, we saw the first Westpac banking institution established, the Bank of New South Wales, under the British governor. The bank, I think, replaced the barter-based economy to standardise financial instruments, and surprisingly in those days even convicts arrived with only small amounts of money, and these systems introduced secure deposit mechanisms reflecting early efforts to integrate marginalised individuals into formal finance. And I like to talk about the history in Australia because this was uniquely Australian innovation at work, born of necessity, the way our country came about, sovereignty, and it encouraged that inclusivity in financial systems, even without consciously setting out to do that from our very early days. And I think that's partly why we now have today this kind of a mix of over-regulation or lack of regulation of our financial systems, but also at the same time a strong history of innovation in financial systems and payment networks. We know in the 80s we pioneered the EPOS network, one of the most efficient in the world, and through the global financial crisis a wave of innovators emerged. Neobanks, digital wallets, regtech, Intersekt, and that shaped the modern industry that we recognise today. I heard the panel talk about what's next, and one person had a crystal ball, but we'll leave it to you to fill what's next. But what's important, I think, about the Australian story is that we have over 800 FinTech firms generating about $4 billion annually, an estimate, in direct economic value. And for our customers in Australia, FinTech has meant better choice, better control, better accessibility to finance, and for consumers, better access before other major jurisdictions all around the world. So we have a good record. Doesn't mean we can rest on our laurels, though. And FinTech is not just about consumer products, as I'm sure you will tell me. I want to also remind you that there is a discussion being had in government and opposition at the moment about sovereign digital capability, and I believe that the sector is actually building that resilience individually through your work, through pioneering technology, through arranging new and innovative systems. reducing our reliance on foreign payment rails and platforms. And to the government, when we talk about sovereign digital capability, it has to involve a strong and largely unregulated private sector that will do that work for government. So we acknowledge your industry is a magnet for the high-skilled jobs that we need. We want to get graduates and entrepreneurs here, and as Immigration Minister, I was very attracted to pioneering visas that would acknowledge the nature of the people that you want to attract here. Have more seamless borders where we could attract high-skilled people to come and go as they needed, and stay here, recognising their skill sets. That would also recognise the sovereign digital capability issues. And I still believe that's something we need to pursue. When I first started in the government, I was Assistant Minister to the Treasurer. And even just in the last 7 years, we've come a long way. I met with the Reserve Bank Board, and I don't mind telling you this story, and that was under Glenn Stevens. And the Reserve Bank Board asked me a question as a very young and junior minister in his first portfolio in the Treasury portfolio. Obviously, they wanted to find a little bit about me. And they asked me what did I think would be the challenge for the Reserve Bank and the central banking system in the next decade. And the answer I gave them was directly that, at the time, the pioneering of blockchain technology, distributed ledger technology, having had some experience with the central banking system in my past, I suggested that perhaps this could be a challenge to our currency, that competitive currencies could be created that weren't founded by nation states. And I think at the time, the Reserve Bank Board didn't really, appreciate, in my mind, that they're a very conservative institution, like a lot of central banking is. They didn't really see the possibility or the danger in terms of regulation from government and what we might be missing. Now, when we fast forward 10 years later, we see that central banking is starting to take seriously all of the developments that have happened over the last 10 years, and we have various attempts to regulate it. My point is about regulation is that we need to have the lightest touch possible, but we also need to have best practice regulation so that we can compete and also compete in our region, but also in the world today. And Australia's been unique in that situation. My starting point is values-based. I think individuals should be rewarded fairly, society should be protected, and when we get to artificial intelligence, it's the same issue. We need to protect from AI's worst excesses, and Australia needs to be made free, and you need to be free to create and build, not to deal with government compliance and stifling regulation. We've already seen some, welcome developments in the artificial intelligence space in the commercial frameworks. News corporations deal with OpenAI, and Reddit's data licensing show that markets can value data. I think content verification tools are also emerging that are valuable. These are positive developments, but government must indeed do more than just watch corporate deals, and we're being asked to do more by the sector, including you, but also other sectors as well, saying AI will need more and better regulation. My view is governments must support all of the economy and the commercial frameworks that really underpin them. Government needs to support both bedroom musicians, startups, victims of AI-enabled crime, and individual citizens at the same time. A challenge for government. Where is the Labor government? Well, with these challenges in mind, I think it was something when we were in government we understood well. Under our leadership, we set down the National AI Ethics Principles, we stood up the National AI Centre, and we kicked off the end-to-end payments modernisation agenda, some of which is still being implemented by the government. And I'm sure you'd agree, payments modernisation agenda needs to continue. By contrast, we think the government hasn't really had a coherent position. Endless consultations, and you've been in those consultations, changing rhetoric from AI ministers and Treasury ministers about the payment systems, and now a rush to concentrate powers in the hands of regulators without adequate checks, as we saw with the recent Payment Systems Bill, which passed through Parliament earlier this month. Minister Tim Ayres said this month as well about AI that he wants unions at the top table when it comes to designing AI regulation. A declaration which I think should chill your sector and every sector involved in this space, because the unions represent, I think, a mode of worker representation from the past, and they haven't modernised to accept the modern economy. So having the traditional unions with traditional industrial framework applied to modern technology and modern systems is something that is unlikely to be productive. Let's be clear, allowing unions to write AI laws won't be a plan that will seriously enhance the enormous productivity benefits that AI stands to deliver. It's a political choice in my mind and something about who gets to decide the rules for our future economy. It's not a strategy for innovation. I'm sure you've all been following the Payment Systems Bill. I think it was unfortunate in its construction. It gave sweeping powers to the RBA. We were able to force some safeguards, parliamentary safeguards, and some standards that will, my colleague Pat Conahan moved that amendment that meant that instruments would be disallowable. This is a small step, but an example of this would be on interchange fee caps, which I know the RBA ran a consultation on recently. And we believe while lower costs can help merchants, if caps are set too low, they will no doubt become prohibitive for smaller fintechs and entrench incumbents. This is why the disallowance mattered, so that Parliament can say you've extended it too far. But I would say to you as a sector, instead of just accepting that laws will unfairly stifle innovation, we need to communicate with all governments of all persuasions, especially when they're moving in this space, that they need to finish the job and deliver a comprehensive payment licensing regime, like our 2021 review of the payment systems envisaged. Provide that regulatory clarity that FinTech is seeking, and rather than by regulation, which ASIC is trying to do now, constant litigation, and the crypto industry is facing that right now, rather than a process of case by case, provide you with the rules and the safeguards you need to get on with what you are doing. I want to make a further point here about blockchain. The revolutionary technology, and certainly when I had that in mind with the Reserve Bank Board a long time ago, it's come a long way since then. It's powering our innovation future. It's programmable money, powering stablecoins, tokenized assets, and smart contracts, and the ability to settle transactions, safely and instantly is amazing. Other jurisdictions have understood this, and I think Australia now needs to come forward and recognise that the United States and Europe are moving quickly, and our government here in Australia has stalled in this process. I know you're crying out for certainty, and I know you're speaking to government, but we probably need to work together better to make sure government understands that delay here will have serious implications for Australia and our financial markets. We heard the example here of the acquisition of Afterpay. And, I won't speak about it again because I know you know all about it. It is a shining example, but the opportunity stands in front of us, but government and regulators are still struggling to catch up and to deal with what you are doing. As my friend Simon Kennedy, who's here today, said in the Australian Financial Review very recently, and we've been fighting on this, global innovation doesn't wait for government backlogs. If Labor continues to delay, capital, companies and jobs will migrate offshore. So in the Coalition, we understand that challenge. Under the Turnbull government, we started the journey on innovation. We even started the conversation with the Australian public, which was a difficult conversation to have and didn't go very well in the beginning. But each conversation is important, and we all have a role to bring society with us. And that innovation conversation and the payments agenda that we started is still being kept by this government. Just now, I think, stalling in a way that isn't productive for you. So where to from here? We believe there should be some robust conversations with government now about this issue. We also believe on AI there's got to be a series of things done, and we're working on our policy and developing our policy for announcement in relation to artificial intelligence. There needs to be robust protections in place for Australian artists, musicians and news organisations, amongst other businesses. And while this can be achieved by adapting the existing regulation in this space, as the Productivity Commission has now said, it's still a work in progress, albeit a work that probably should have been close to completion by now. Our view inherently, though, in the market is that fair work demands fair compensation, and people's produce of goods and services requires regulation that supports that principle. A let-it-rip approach that legalises taking others' work without permission or pay is not supported by the Coalition. And our bottom lines are simple. we have 4 simple points. 1, no legalisation of theft. Copyrighted and proprietary data must be treated as not be treated as free training fodder. Creative Australia, our national arts body, has put it very well that warning generative AI built off existing creative work without compensation threatens the viability of creative careers. Put simply, we agree, license it or leave it. On 2, we reject a regulatory Wild West. As I've said, I think AI requires rules. Obviously, FinTech and payment systems requires rules from government. And we don't believe in the rule of the jungle where AI is unleashed on Australians on a no-hold-barred basis, a failure to effectively regulate those risks. And that's why we had the ethical principles and stood up the AI Centre when we were in government. Finally, point 3, contracts must rule. Markets only work if contracts work, and contracts can change and contract law can change to take into account technological advances, but Australia has to ensure from a governmental perspective that gaps in applying contract law to AI are addressed so rights can be protected and indeed traded for fair compensation. And the government should have no role in setting what that compensation should be or how it should work, but you in the market need to understand that will be the principle coming, I think, from all sides of government. So what we're going to do is keep pressing Labor to fix what they are doing and move faster on their agenda, something I think everybody here would welcome. Governments need to take account the rapid pace that your industry is moving at, and we've seen failure to regulate in the tech space and over the development from the internet to social media to today. Regulators are catching up and then correcting because they've been unable to deal with it in the first place. First, we think we need to stop the policy zigzags. There are too many ministers in government delivering too many consultation processes with little certainty or coherence about what comes next. You need a clear point of contact with government and clear endpoints to your consultation and your input. Second, we believe bringing forward the National AI Capability Plan with milestones this year. And I note here that our friends at the Tech Council of Australia have warned us that waiting to the end of 2025 is too slow, but we're saying bring it forward until the end of 25 because that's the most realistic time government can, but the sector is saying that is still too slow. Third, set the guardrails for high-risk AI settings. Definitely ensuring lower risk, higher productivity users are still in play. And fourth, supercharge business adoption where it's responsible to do so. For example, allowing the startup training tool, trial tools supported by the National AI Centre, which the Coalition exampled and established when we were in office. In essence, the Coalition is saying this, and I'll finish on this note: FinTech is not just a sector in our belief, it's the outcome of a mindset and a journey that humanity is on in terms of innovation. It's a mindset that says Australians shouldn't be content just to be passive users or consumers of overseas platforms, but play a vital role in building them and hosting them and innovating with them in our own country. I think the FinTech sector from the beginning of our country to today and all our financial systems actually shows Australian innovation at its best. And I want to assure you, as the Shadow Minister for Industry and Innovation, we don't need more over-regulation, but we do need that regulatory certainty, and you need that regulatory certainty that protects creators, promotes competition, but lets you build that innovation here. And so that's what we will propose in policy in coming terms. We're having some roundtables today with you to hear from you, but we would like to hear from you. I think it's never been a more important time for your sector actually to realise that governments are regulating more and more around the world in a faster way, and to make sure your voice is absolutely heard in that process so that your regulation is fit for purpose and allows you to get on doing the innovation that you've been doing. Thank you.
Thank you.